It's an impromptu stealing signals. I got RotoViz's Conor Driscoll, you know him as Drico, on board. We're going to jump into an FFPC Superflex draft. We're doing live drafts all day today. I already did 3 hours with Jacob Sanderson earlier. We are back. Let's get it.
I love the intro music.
Yeah, thanks, man. Glad to
coming in with a bang.
Welcome, Drico. You just told me, I thought it was a Superflex draft. You told me it was the Best Ball tournament, the 125 Best Ball tournament. So this is not Superflex. We have Christian McCaffrey and CeeDee Lamb starting. You and I have been
That did happen to me once where I registered. I thought it was a Superflex. I saw CMC go off first. And then CeeDee Lamb, and I'm like, that made me double check. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm in the wrong draft.
Welcome, man. How you doing?
Doing good. Been doing a lot of these FFPC drafts, trying
Nice.
to. Some people will do a lot of the different services or platforms. I'm trying. My goal is to try and get really good at just one of them.
Nice.
And so we're on the clock here.
We are up. We see McCaffrey.
We've got the streamers minute.
Oh, what's that?
We've got the streamers minute.
Yeah. I mean, pretty comfortable with any of the top three guys in ADP here. Over here on FFPC, Bijan Robinson is highest in ADP. I think he's a smash this year, but I don't know if running back's the right pick structurally to start this. You have more
I think you can do you can start running back with a lot more confidence in FFPC just
Where
because.
Where would you go directionally
What's that?
here? What would be your pick?
I would lean Bijan here.
Okay, let's take him. I like it. I want to get more of him. I think he's like the legendary upside player this year. I think is there a little bit of echo? I feel like I can hear myself in your.
Oh, I'm sorry.
A little bit there.
Okay.
Yeah, he's we've talked a lot about him on the stream. You got the Rams coordinator coming over. I just did 2 divisional pods with Leone as well. People are excited about the projection pods. I've been asking when they're going to roll out. They're going to be coming out soon. We did the AFC and NFC South. He's very high on the Falcons as well. The play volume increase, the concentration of the skill position players and the usage and how all that can manifest. It just feels like it could be the Bijan Robinson season this year, so it'll be fun to build a Bijan team. Can you still hear me, Drico?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, I'm trying to. You said that you were having an echo, so I'm trying to change my microphone to be.
Yeah, chat mentioned they were hearing it as well. What's up, guys? Thanks for jumping in. This was the most last-second thing we could have ever done. There's only a few people hanging out right now. Hopefully a few more will pop in. Drico and I had talked about doing a draft in the last few weeks, and they haven't come together because of scheduling stuff. We just decided on doing this
now,
one.
By the way? You've been
What's that?
jumping a long time. Do I sound better now?
No, now I can barely hear you. You're really quiet now.
Oh, shit.
I can vamp for like 2 hours. Don't worry, you're good. And that's a literal 2 hours, usually more like 4. But yeah, no, we've been talking about doing a draft. As of yesterday, we decided we would try to get into this one. Look, you mentioned that you thought this one was going to fill. I was like, yeah, fine, sure. You know, I'm doing a bunch of other recordings all day. Did 3 hours with Jacob Sanderson earlier on the stream. If you missed that show, make sure to check that one out. That was a really fun conversation. Talked a lot about Anthony Richardson. I did the 2 divisional pods with Leone. And then we were getting ready to do this. And I was like, do you want to just go live on my channel rather than just kind of being on a call and doing it offline? And you wanted to pop on. So here we are. And we're through the first round already. We see the rest of the first round look pretty similar to Underdog drafts. This is my first one over on FFPC this year. We're picking out of the 6 hole. What's that?
This is interesting because it's I think it's the same trend as everywhere else, but there's almost never Sam Laporte is the only tight end that will go in the first round, and usually 111, 112 if he does, which is it's a bit unusual for FFPC.
Yeah, this year because of the tight end premium that we're not getting any. You're pretty quiet. The chat is mentioning as well. Can you turn you sound better, but can you turn your mic up? Your gain. We're troubleshooting. It's our first time broadcasting.
How's now?
Sounds great.
Okay. There was a okay. Yeah, sorry for the live troubleshooting.
I mean, I sent you this link like 3 minutes before this draft started.
Right.
It's not really your fault at all.
So the one person who's been the number 4, they've been in almost all of my drafts. For most, so this is I think it's their 141. So that sort of implies they're pretty close to maxing.
This is their 141st already, and this tournament goes all the way right up to. And this nuts. Tournament goes right up to week 1, right? So they're gonna max like. Wow. I am trying to tweet out this link. What's that? Go ahead. What were we gonna say?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry. I was all I'm gonna say is that 142 in pretty incredible that they're gonna max before August.
Yeah, that's wild. They're gonna max
early in the draft, early in the season, because they've been in every single one of my drafts. Early in the season, they were completely punting at tight end, which very questionable strategy, especially this year. But lately, they've been coming around on the elite tight end builds on tight end premium.
What drafter is that?
The 104.
Okay.
Enemies to all.
We are back on the clock. Kelsey goes as well. London, Harrison, Olave. Olave probably would have been my preferred wide receiver there. I could go a lot of directions here. I'm curious.
I have a strong preference for McBride here.
Okay.
I do.
Yeah, he's my tight end 1. You're not going to have to convince me on him. He's my tight end 1.
Okay.
we are very in alignment. That's where I would have probably directed us, unless you felt that we needed to go wide receiver structurally. I'm going to let you drive this
right
stuff.
Yeah. It's interesting. Underdog has this kind of like rush to fill the wide receiver spots, and I think there is a part of that on FFPC, but you can definitely it's a much easier time of landing the plane. So I'm much more comfortable like starting off without 2 receivers on FFPC.
For sure. Yeah, so what's up, guys? Thanks for jumping in. Those of you who are here. Tiger Uppercut asks, what's the roster requirements? The starting lineup, I don't know how many rounds this is.
So it's 20 rounds.
Starting lineup is 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 1 tight end, and then 2 flexes. It's tight end premium, and so the tight ends can factor into the flex discussion. And
right,
and
definitely if you can get 2 or 3 decent tight end weeks or tight end scores in your lineup in a certain week, it's almost like a guarantee that lineup is going to have a good score. Like they can get to 30 points very, very easily.
And Drico, you won this contest.
I won the first one.
In 2022, right?
Yeah. It was I think it was the 2021 season. Won January 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the inaugural tournament. What I loved most about that, other than winning, was that the final was just 12 teams. And so what was fun about it is you could very quickly find out who all you were competing against. And it was a very intimate sweat.
And Sean Siegel and Colm Kelly were there, and Leone was in the final as well. Is that right?
Yeah, Leone was in the final too.
Yeah.
And so Sean and Colm's team, their team actually finished second. And,
right.
it came down to the wire. Jarvis Landry, he was their last remaining player, and they needed 12 points. I think it was 11.5 or something like that. They needed a certain low, very achievable amount of points from Jarvis Landry. The Browns were playing the Steelers Monday Night Football, and I think it was definitely Baker Mayfield's last game for the Browns, and he had hit the ball tipped like multiple times. He took an insane amount of sacks, but he still got the ball to Jarvis Landry's hands in the end zone twice, but Landry dropped it.
Wow.
And you
won because of that.
Right.
Wow. We are on deck here with Devontae Adams sliding through. Deebo Samuel also has not gone. I see his ADP is a little lower in this format. I mean, there's definitely some receiver options. I was just checking the Falcons schedule because I knew they played the Raiders in the fantasy playoffs. They play in week 15. What is the advanced structure in this?
It's 2 of 12. In the it's 2 of 12 in round 15, and then I think it's 2 of 12 again in round 16. I'm not sure. Last year was 3 of 12, but it's one of those things where it doesn't make that much difference to strategy. But the point is, it's a pretty gentle advance rate structure.
Do you so in the queue here? You don't even have Adams. It seems like you don't really like Adams. I'd take a lot more Adams than it. I know Sean, for example, is really low.
You like Adams? I
he had 175 targets last year, and I think he's going to have a little bit of a better quarterback situation. But
he's a big value. He is sliding. His ADP is 22.
The other question for me would be Pitts, who you have in the queue. I'd be very comfortable going 2 elite tight ends if you prefer to take Pitt. We already have Bijan. We can start making a bet on Atlanta as a team pretty easily.
You choose Devontae.
Let's do Pitts. I want to draft Kyle Pitts. I just clicked him.
Okay. For a second, I thought the clock ran out, and we auto Devontae, and I was like, "Fuck."
So you had Kyron at the top of the queue. I was getting a little nervous there because we did take Bijan in the first. I didn't necessarily want to get a second running back this early, but the Adams pick would have been comfortable, and yet I'm a big proponent of the elite tight end tier this year. I think there's a tier of 7. 5 are off the board. This is tight end premium. We talked about how there's 2 flexes, so Pitts can play into the flex. It's a really nice change. And structurally, it's not as crazy to put this much draft capital into the tight end position. If McBride and Pitts are both good. What's that?
Because you can start up the 3 tight ends. That's as big as a difference as Underdog. You can start 4 receivers and you can start 3 tight ends. So it's only 1 less than wide receiver. And then the tight end premium does really balance out the scores. So I think what you're getting at here is, so obviously we haven't taken a wide receiver yet, but I don't feel behind because we've almost effectively taken out a wide receiver spot because we're saying most weeks we expect Kyle Pitts to hit a flex spot.
Especially in a tight end premium format. You would expect if you're taking 2 tight ends early that they are hitting the flex, not just sometimes, but with regularity. Right. And to your point, it's a 2 wide receiver, 2 flex format where if one of those flexes is taken up by a tight end, you're now only at most starting 3 receivers or having 3 receivers hit your lineup. We're still going to take plenty of receivers, but in terms of being behind, it's a huge difference if it's 3 receivers hitting your lineup or 4, where you're talking, or the potential for 4, where you have to have 3 plus a flex. Because the other option, if Kittle comes all the way back, for example, it doesn't have to even be a 3rd receiver. It could be the other flex could be another tight end, or it could be another running back or what have you. Only having to start 2 receivers really changes the math as well.
And then the other element, of course, is starving the beast. So
that's right.
6 tight ends have gone off the board here, and I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams without a tight end. And I thought
that was going to lead to Kittle going right away after that. That it might actually cause that starve to be the beast thing. If Kittle comes back, how high? how low
you
does
won't
he
have
end
to
up
push
going?
me too hard to take a third tight end.
To take 3 straight. So Ingram actually has the higher ADP. It makes some sense that Ingram would be bumped up because it's a tight end premium format. He had 114 catches last year, the second most for a tight end of all time. Some of that was because Christian Kirk got banged up. I do think that number's got to come down, but Ingram is the type of tight end that pretty clearly is better when you get more points, especially if you go from half PPR at Underdog to 1.5 PPR. The further you go on the PPR scale is going to be better for Ingram. It's going to be worse for Kittle, who's more of an efficiency play and has some target ceiling concerns. So anyway, we don't have to go Kittle by any means, but it is available to us.
Yeah, I think that's interesting as well because I haven't taken a lot of Evan Ingram. Oh, well, there he goes.
Okay.
That's right around ADP as well. So I have a feeling here that these guys who don't have them, because you do have this middle tier, they're not panicking yet. That they're like, oh, I can still get Kittle, I can still get Ingram, and then Bowers, he goes at the 6th, 7th turn or in the 6th round. So I still have some safety blankets there. I still have Jake Ferguson. But I think when that tier goes, you're still gonna have some people with you're still gonna have some people without a tight end, and that's when you see the real race at the bottom.
Panic set in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the other big part of it is how all the tight ends go higher. So if you don't attack it early, you do wind up with some tough decisions later. So we're back up. The pick for me here would probably be Stephon Diggs, which I think is a nice value in the middle of the 4th. I don't know why he's even sliding in the 3rd in Underdog. Obviously with tight end premium, a little different here. How do you feel about Diggs?
I love Diggs here.
Okay.
This is a right around where he goes on FFPC.
Okay.
So let's take Diggs here. He's got that risk. He's a little bit older and all that sort of stuff. But hopefully, being amongst other good receivers and the rising superstar quarterback, all that kind of stuff, masks that. And you're getting an incredible discount for a receiver of his talent.
Yeah, you just said a second ago, this is a round where he goes on FFPC.
Yeah, we actually took him. It's not a reach, but we took him 3 picks ahead of ADP.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. 2 QBs already off the board. We already have like Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Etienne off the board. The running back's going a little higher over here than I'm used to on Underdog as well. It's really nice to start Bijan, McBride, Pitts, and still get Diggs, who I think should be an early 3rd round pick, and comes before there's a little bit of a mini drop off at the position for me, where like Michael Pittman is definitely on the other side of that. He went ahead of this Diggs pick. I think DJ Moore is definitely on the other side of that. He went before this pick. Metcalf just goes there. I think he's on the other side of that little mini tier break that I'm referencing. There's maybe 1 or 2
receiver here. And
what's that?
I said there's definitely values at a receiver on FFPC with guys like Pittman often going before him.
And Kittle did make it back to us, and it would have been a consideration, but we did already take the 2 tight ends. And the more I was thinking about the tight end premium, I was like, his ADP here is actually 53. There's a possibility he come back to us in the 5th even.
Right. By ADP, he should come back. I'll be interested to see if the 101 takes Kittle, just because they do have CMC, and then
Ayuk.
Yeah, and Ayuk, and then that's another person sort of robbing the room of tight ends as well.
And the nice thing is, once you get through the elite tight end tier, it does start to dry up a tight end, especially in the later rounds. I mean, we're definitely going to be in the market for tacking on at tight end, but I really like the position we're in where we don't have to force any tight end picks until potentially very late. It's a 20-round draft. We're probably not going to stop at 2, but I don't know what your thoughts are. To me, it seems even potentially possible to stop at 2. when you take.
It depends. I'd still want a third. And
Sure.
Just
and there's easy ways to do that cheaply, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Like we don't have to force it. Like even if it's
Right.
like Michael Mayer really late,
Right.
I mean, I think he's probably undervalued. Obviously,
I
he's
agree.
covered up by Bowers, but he's probably undervalued for some of the scenarios for him.
Right. His contingent upside is obviously like massive. Where a lot of the backup tight ends, if the starter gets hurt, it's probably a tight end by committee. Whereas if Bowers gets hurt, you feel very good that it's just gonna be Mayer.
Right. So anyway, that's a question for later. Stephanie's right. I hate Jake Ferguson, and
I hate him too. So
good. All right, we're in agreement there. We refuse to draft Jake Ferguson in the draft. No, I'm just kidding. But not my favorite pick. Stephanie is correct. What's up, Steph? Thanks for joining us. Boo, she's a Cowboys fan and a Jake Ferguson supporter, as I understand. We are at the turn here, the 4-5 turn. We have Bijan, McBride, Pitts, Stephon Diggs for the audio listeners. We took Diggs over Kittle. Kittle did go at the late 4-10. Jalen Hurts was another option potentially where we took Diggs for people wondering kind of who was on the board. He goes at the 4-11. Both Allen and Patrick Mahomes were already off the board. Zay Flowers goes 4-12. He's another receiver that I would have liked to see slide through to us potentially. I mean, Tank Dell is going to be like an option for us. We're going to still have, if he makes it back, we're going to still have, I think, some wide receiver options here, but we're going to start to be getting, Tank Dell goes with Zay Flowers at the 501.
Right.
So that's not going to happen. I was going to say, we're going to start to have these stacks building out potentially.
Yeah, he would have been very high on the priority list. We still have I see one receiver that I'd really like at this pick, and then
I put one in the queue. Is it the guy that I put in the queue?
Yes.
Okay. So hopefully that guy comes back to us, because I agree. I'm having a hard time figuring out what would happen. And we do see two more receivers go.
Jacobs.
What's that?
Josh Jacobs is sliding, and this guy clearly loves running backs. He knows he's got it. It's going too far on Josh Jacobs.
One pick ahead of us has started Breece Hall, Saquon Barkley, Devon Achane, DK Metcalf. It feels like a receiver pick. Two other receivers did go, Amari Cooper and Hollywood Brown. Those were not the guy that we're hoping comes to us at 506. Rashad White went off the board in between there. There's not really a running back that I would consider here. This is sort of like this year's dead zone. Tight end is Jake Ferguson at the top of the queue. Quarterback's Lamar Jackson. Would be vaguely interested in talking about an early quarterback potentially. Not that we have any kind of stack, but we have a week 17 bring back. He did take T. Higgins.
Okay.
So we have Diggs. If we did Lamar, we could have, and then we could do like Devontae Walker late. We could have like a little Lamar stack with Diggs as a bring back for week 17. We don't have to go that route if you have something else you're seeing as a backup.
No, I don't. I hate all of the other picks.
Christian Kirk is the next receiver by ADP. I could do that. You don't like him?
Yeah, I don't think it's
the right pick. That's fine. So Lamar is sliding by ADP. The only two guys higher by ADP are Josh Jacobs and Joe Mixon, two backs that we don't really want to grab here.
Yeah, I think this is a clear just take the receiver spot.
Wait, the receiver, the quarterback, Lamar Jackson?
Take the quarterback spot.
Okay, yeah, it's flat everywhere else. That's often when you just take the QB, we get a little correlation there with Diggs and Lamar. So we get some Lamar Jackson into our lives. Bijan, Trey McBride, Kyle Pitts, Stephon Diggs, Lamar Jackson is the start. We're going to still be able to hit wide receiver, and then we're going to be able to stack up or try to stack up Lamar late.
There are late options for Baltimore that will be
I mentioned Devontae Walker. There's been some Rashad Bateman hype again. We could start talking about him at some point, and then everyone loves Isaiah Likely, even though I'm kind of the mindset that he might just be like a handcuff in this new offense. It's a little bit more wide receiver focused as of last year with Todd Monken.
So taking Lamar in the 5th round, those honestly feels very, very, very good. 506 Lamar does feel good. You get Anthony Richardson to pick after him. I did listen to some of the pod you did with Jacob. You do not like him as a quarterback pick. So getting Lamar just a pick before him, over a round after Mahomes, we're in a little bit of a tight spot at receiver.
I do. The more I talk about Richardson, I had a chance to talk about Leone with him on the AFC South pod as well. I know that I'm going to definitely come across like I'm very anti-Richardson and dislike him. Part of the issue for me is I do want to be in on the profile. I'm trying to understand the cost and where the hype is. And I got to be honest, Jacob gave me some good things to think about. Leone gave me some good things to think about, but I'm not convinced that my take that he is being pushed up too high in ADP to the quarterback 5 spot, basically solely for some type of rushing production that doesn't actually make a lot of sense when you peel back the layers of their offense. I gotta be honest that I'm not totally convinced.
You're seeing a lot of fragility in the rushing projection.
Not even in the rushing projection so much as I don't think the passing projection is very high. So I think the rushing projection has to be massive. And so it's not that there's fragility. I think he's actually a pretty high floor play with the rushing, but there is some injury concerns. Leone did bring some great numbers from Pat Thorman. That I had talked with Jacob earlier about the play volume in some of Anthony Richardson's games, but their pace was still fast. They were still snapping the ball early on the play clock. They were trying to play up tempo. My idea behind the play volume stuff was that maybe Steichen was kind of slowing things down to let Richardson, operate and almost like kind of hide Richardson or something. And I don't believe that's the case. The more that I talked about it with Leone, it sounds like they were actually trying to play fast. They just wound up with lower play volume, which in some cases can be just the way the game works, whether there's efficiency in the drives, whether there's turnovers, etc. So there was, again, it's a very small sample that we're trying to parse because he only played 4 games last year. So that's part of the concern. I think there's a lot of extrapolation of those 4 games. It's a very fascinating case. He's not. I definitely don't want to be known as the guy who's very anti-Anthony Richardson. I made the bold claim early on the stream with Jacob that he's the most overpriced player, and then I spent the rest of the conversation being like, please don't quote me on that. But I said it. It is what it is. I don't believe that, and I don't want to be the guy who's known as that because I do see the scenarios where Richardson can break fantasy football, and that's scary if you're the guy who's known as the anti-Anthony Richardson.
Right.
Guy. So there's definitely a lot of stuff to weigh with him. I'm trying to figure out where the excitement is and like how it's going to play out, how it can manifest statistically as I go through the projections and all those things. But a lot of times, when we talk about projections, we're not looking for like the best projection. We're looking for unprojectable outcomes. And he definitely has this type of profile that can manifest in a monster way. So it's a tricky conversation for sure.
Well, just take this draft for example. He is going against beside Lamar, and Lamar is somebody who you will get rushing production from, but then has also flashed in a really, really strong passing efficiency, which very, very difficult to believe for Richardson, given what he's
those are big. That's a huge difference. And Lamar has multiple 1,000-yard rushing seasons and has this huge rushing profile that Richardson would be lucky to get to. The one thing he could do better than Lamar is Lamar's never had more than 7 rush TDs. We talked through on the earlier stream. The rush TDs is the huge thing. If Richardson can have double-digit rush TDs like Josh Allen, like a Jalen Hurts, those guys had 15 each last year. That's huge. Chad is asking, is it safe to assume FFPC's tight end premium? That is the case. Fantasy Football Garage, what's up? Happy 4th of July to you too. But yeah, that would be the big thing for the Richardson case is like if he can get to double-digit rush TDs, that's pretty massive. I question, and we talked through this with Jacob, I question whether they're going to push him to a lot of usage around the goal line. Double-digit rush TDs is tough to do.
Especially
but my projection
have JT beside you.
Yeah, that's the thing. Me and Leone started talking through that. They're projecting Richardson for more rush TDs than JT. I'm projecting JT for more. And we talked to that specific point. Definitely got to listen to the pod for that. We're back on the clock. You have Bowers at the top of the queue. I love taking Bowers in all formats. We do already have the 2 tight ends. And I also like the receivers you have in here. Keenan Allen, Jaden Reed. I prefer Keenan Allen.
So
and also
pros for Bowers is that he could just easily outscore those other guys. We then really start the room of tight ends.
I'm down.
Okay.
If you want to take Bowers, I'm down. Like I'm not gonna push us away from it. I think in tight end premium, like he's a more of an efficiency play as a rookie, right? He's a little weaker in tight end premium. You prefer Bowers?
Yes.
Okay, let's take Bowers. I'm very comfortable with that. We have 3 tight ends through 6 rounds. We are really starving the beast.
We are going to do we're going to stay with 3 tight ends.
Nice, I like that. So structurally, we're out. We don't have to worry about the late round tight ends. It does take Isaiah Likely off the board for a late round stack partner with Lamar Jackson, but personally, I don't think
he was never going to be an option for us.
You're not in on it either. I don't think he's as good of a play as people seem to believe.
Right.
So he
wasn't that good. Like
yeah.
you had the outcome you wanted last year. Like was it Likely?
And he just ran hot on touchdowns. He wasn't even that good in yardage. Yeah, Andrews was out and he didn't even hit as big as I completely agree. And there's I think very questionable standalone value. The one thing is we probably do know that he's a pretty capable tight end. Like he's been able to produce and he has some familiarity with Lamar and all those things. But so anyway, we're heading towards the 6-7 turn. The only hesitation I had there with Bowers is I've only drafted over on Underdog. We have 1 receiver through 6 rounds. This is not something that I'm I feel completely out of my depth in that regard, but obviously we've talked through it. Only 2 wide receivers
with the way we've drafted here, we have to think about it as if Kyle Pitts is a receiver, Brock Bowers is a receiver. And so really we have 3 receivers.
Artillery Frost says he likes that FFPC calls out auto drafts. I love that too. On the board, you can see the CJ Stroud pick there at 603 has a little asterisk in front of his name, similar to Tyreek Hill at the 103. Those are auto picks. I've always enjoyed that as well. I appreciate that they mentioned that. And our Artillery Frost is asking this as well. We did talk about it a moment ago. 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 1 tight end, 2 flexes. So right now, with the tight end premium, we're planning to be flexing 2 tight ends potentially in some weeks. The guy at the 101 is annoying me because he's taking guys way ahead of ADP, closer to where they go in on Underdog, and I want to be able to leverage the Underdog ADP to get some of these guys. Yeah, so he took Zay Flowers and Tank Dell at the last turn. Tank Dell should have made it all the way back to us by ADP. He just took Keenan Allen and Xavier Worthy. Keenan Allen would not have made it back, but Xavier Worthy was the guy that I was earmarking as the one that I was hoping would make it back to us. They're good picks, but he's got a nice structure going. He started with Christian McCaffrey and Mark Andrews, Brandon Ayuk, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, Keenan Allen, Xavier Worthy. A lot of wide receivers, which is fine as well because you can fill the 2 flex spots at wide receiver too. You can be 4 receivers deep with just the 1 elite tight end. There's just multiple paths here. It's one of the fun parts of building on FFPC, especially with the best ball element.
I think don't call me a racist. I think that might be Chung.
I'm not trying to get canceled here. What do you start with? Don't call me a racist. That's no. Jung's our buddy from we've met and hung out with in Vegas. He is a Stealing Signal subscriber. Ray Chung. It would be interesting if that was him. Jaden Reed goes 1 pick.
Used that name before.
Okay, and then maybe it is him. He does a lot on FFPC. We are up. Jaden Reed goes 1 pick before us. I think RB2 is a possibility here with David Montgomery, James Conner, DeAndre Swift at the top of the quew.
If we want,
do you have a wide receiver you love here? I'd probably be Deontay Johnson. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. And where does Deontay go?
90.
Okay.
Closer to our next pick. We could wait at receiver if you want to and go running. What would you like? We got 10 seconds.
I'd probably do McConkey, but
okay.
If you want a running back here.
No, we'll grab McConkey. That's fine. I don't take a ton of him.
I don't either, but I feel like if as a sort of hedge play, if he does hit and we're just like not left with very much, this would be the team where you'd want him on. Where if you got a big hit from McConkey, we'd want him on this team.
I think of that differently, where because we only have the one receiver, I like the boring Deontay Johnson type play where I'm like, I project him for so much volume and I feel it's really stable and he's going to run a ton of routes and all of these things. Whereas when I have a lot of depth at receiver, that's when I'm like, I just want to keep chalking up firepower. And if McConkey really hits, it's dominant. The wide band of the rookie play can also be a pretty big miss where like it's not a floor decision, but obviously this is around the range that we were taking Quentin Johnston last year, and Quentin Johnston was a 0 on a lot of those teams. The difference between that in your build at wide receiver 2 and I believe Deontay Johnson's going to have very consistent volume this year because he earns targets and no one else on that team really can. The
only I really don't like, especially if you're in the middle of a draft board, I really I don't like reaching that far ahead unless I really really like the receiver. I think he's fine. Do you feel very strongly about Deontay?
Yes, I do. I've been saying over on Underdog that I think he's mispriced by like 3 or 4 rounds. I did my projection on them, and I tried to really mute his target earning, but there's no one else there. He was more than 1.5 percentage points better than what Adam Thielen was in targets per out run last year, each of the last 4 years. And for Thielen, that was his best number in 5 seasons. He was also 4th in the NFL in routes. He was more of a routes-based play. He earned 135 targets in this offense. They were a little bit like weirdly fast-paced last year. They probably won't be as much this year, but he only had a 21.5% targets per out run. My point is Thielen is – a lot of the underlying stuff for Thielen is not great. Mingo is a complete bust. The tight ends are a problem. Jatavian Sanders could theoretically hit. And then Xavier Legette is the other wide band player in this offense. We're like, yeah, if he hits, that's great. But he's a vertical, so like Hans is saying Xavier Legette will 100% earn a significant amount of targets this season. I don't doubt that. It's not going to make it so that Deontay Johnson can't have a ton as well. There's just not enough here. Like there can be multiple players in an offense, and he's a high ADOT player. A significant amount of targets for him might look like 90 or 100 or 110. And even if he has somewhere in that range, like Deontay Johnson can really, really smash. When I got through my projection with them that I mentioned was, I thought conservative on Deontay. He came out with Christian Kirk and Jaden Reed. Like that's where he, from a target perspective, the baseline projections pushed him toward. And I don't really like to do it as a baseline projection, like floor-based play. But when you think about the range of outcomes type stuff, like I think I could be light on his targets. I mean, I also had him close to Tank Dell, who, like, that's a projections issue where you just can't project enough volume to all the Houston guys. So I only have Tank Dell for 105 targets because I have both Diggs and Nico for plenty of volume. I have Deontay projected for 32 more targets, Dell for way more efficiency, and so they come out close to each other. That pure volume elevates Deontay. But that's the point, is like, if Deontay were efficient somehow, which is probably not going to happen with Bryce Young, and he's never been an efficient receiver. Oh, great. He gets auto-picked. Fantastic. That would be a way that he could smash. I also think he could go like for 150 plus. That's what I've been talking about over on Underdog when I've been saying I think he's really mispriced in the 7th over there. Now he's going more in the 6th. But I was like, man, he belongs like 3 rounds higher just based on the fact that there's no other receiver at this point that I can make a reasonable case can have 150, 160 targets. And I think you can make a pretty, not just reasonable, like easy case with Deontay in terms of the way that he can earn volume. And like reception perception backs that up. Open score backs that up. Like everything backs it up. Last year, he had fewer targets per game, but he had a couple games where he was banged up during the game. His targets per route were still very strong last year. Like he's always been strong at that. So anyway, I do feel pretty strongly that he's mispriced and being overlooked by multiple rounds. He's like the new Jarvis Landry. Like you just can't get volume like this at this point. But Ladd is an interesting play too in his own right for a variety of reasons. He could have a lot of volume. He's getting a lot of hype already. I don't hate that at all. I was hoping Deontay might come back. That was the other reason to play it that way.
And that was part of why
right.
I wanted somebody ahead of him. It was just like, oh well, you can always get Deontay back.
Yeah, you could potentially get Deontay back. Would have been a really nice pairing with Ladd. He goes auto-picked, and I think there's a strong just 4 picks before. A strong possibility he would have made it back. We were 1 pick away. The 2 guys at the top of the wide receiver queue are Rashee Rice and JSN, and I love taking them both. I think Rashee Rice, the fear has been a little bit too much. This is the type of team where I would actually want to take Rice.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, I just think, I was making a case that with his profile, a 2+ yards per out run in his rookie season tied to Patrick Mahomes before the suspension stuff came out, that he was mispriced at the 2-3 turn at Underdog, that he was probably a 1-2 turn guy. And then he gets suspended and all this, and he falls all these rounds. But we don't even know he's suspended yet. We don't know how long. It could be a couple games. I think the profile's really strong here. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm taking a lot of Rashee Rice here.
Okay. Let's grab him. He's a really nice fit, similar to a lot of the Deontay stuff, where when he plays, he should be a pretty stable target guy to add to this build with Diggs, with McConkey. We get access to the Chiefs' passing game. They've been number 1 in pass rate over expected, 5 straight years. I think they're collectively mispriced, the receivers in that passing game. But we do get easily the cheapest over here on FFPC. Rice is going... He's really rising at Underdog right now. He's going a lot later here at wide receiver 43. We get a little bit of that discount on his price still. Worthy went 701. Hollywood Brown went in the 5th round. I mean, if Rice only gets a 3-game suspension, he should be going ahead of Hollywood Brown, in my opinion. Right.
And a 3-game suspension is nothing.
Yeah, that would be no real problem at all. So Han says he doesn't disagree. Deontay will be the alpha, but when you consider ADP talent, draft capital, and the way Canales spoke about him using him as using Lockett with manufactured touches via screens and reverses in addition to deep shots, I think he'll smash. I'm fine with that take. I'm not disagreeing with Lockett.
Right, you're not saying that he's getting 60% targets.
Right. There's plenty of room for Lockett to still be good, even if Deontay gets to 160 targets, because there's no one else. Adam Thielen's profile was very routes-based last year. Me and Leone just did the NFC South I mentioned. We both had a Thielen around 85 targets, which is still actually decent for his spot in ADP, but that's about 50 fewer targets than last year for Thielen, and they're projecting it too. It's not just me hating on Thielen. And that actually makes him look like a minor value to ADP, like I said. Mingo's not it. They don't have a lot of tight ends. Young didn't throw to the backs much last year. Maybe he'll throw to the backs a little bit more. But the logical answer is just the guy that's really good at open score and really good in reception perception and really good at targets per out run every year and really good at just constantly creating separation in every route is going to get targeted a ton because there's no one else who makes sense. And then behind that, Lockett can have a good year and all those things. So anyway, I do feel pretty passionately that Deontay Johnson's a guy that as he starts to get pricier, I'm like, man, I wish I would have pulled the trigger on him more because I was taking Rashee Rice and JSN over him for a long time in the 7th round. I wanted exposure to all of them, but I'm frustrated that I'm only at 9% or 10% Deontay or whatever I have. When I was looking at my exposures earlier, I'm like, man, I should be double the field. He was too cheap. I do think because he's kind of boring, he'll probably stay too cheap. So anyway, he's a guy I'm actively trying to get a lot of right now. But
right.
Rashee Rice too.
You have the resurging offense piece as well.
Right. Rashee Rice makes sense too. Stephanie says every team feels like a Rashee Rice team. JSN and a Dunze at the turn. All right, I think it might be our buddy Ray Chung there.
I think it is. I've seen him use that team name before as well, and it's literally drafting exactly like I think Chung does. McCaffrey at 101, Andrews at the 2-3, and 7 straight receivers. A lot of young receivers. Tank Dallas, a year 2 guy. He just took JSN, another year 2 guy. Zay Flowers, a year 2 guy. Also took Xavier Worthy and a Dunze. The one Vetty mixed in is a big-time targeter in Keenan Allen. He also has Brandon Ayuk in there. It's good players that we like around these parts. That would not surprise me if that was our buddy Ray Chung.
Jameson Williams goes. We do get to where it's pretty thin at receiver at this point. And for me, this becomes a nice running back pocket, unless you wanted a detour to get like a second QB. We don't really have any stack options at QB here. What would you do in this range? I think for me, it'd be Javonte Williams, but I'm curious what you think.
I'd be happy to do Javonte. I kind of like just taking a stab at Brian Thomas again.
I missed him. Okay, yeah, no, this is a really good price on him. I've been down on him. The listeners of this channel know that I'm not a huge fan, but Keon Coleman just went. Jameson Williams already off the board, like I mentioned. Brian Thomas arguably should be going ahead of Ladd McConkey, who we took 2 rounds ago. Went ahead of him in the reality draft. I'm totally comfortable in best ball adding him in the middle of the 9th round. Let's do that.
Okay.
We'll come back to running back. Javonte might even make it back. He wasn't even the top running back by ADP. Bijan Robinson, Austin Eckler, the 2 Washington guys were. Raheem Mostert, Tyjae Spears just went off. Jonathan Brooks went in the last round. James Conner the round before. There's a couple names. Jalen Warren, Zach Moss have gone. A couple names that are starting to go in this pocket that's really fun to hit running backs in, but there's still plenty.
If Brian Thomas does hit, so the point I was trying to, if Brian Thomas does hit, this is a lineup where we've built a lot of strength to like take advantage of that hit. So I know
Yes.
I do get the point where we're hoping that the other picks are great and that we just need a little bit of points to sort of push that up. But we would really benefit from one of these receivers hitting too.
Sure. Yeah, I guess the minor thing there, because I said I didn't really want it to be like a floor discussion, is that I was kind of breaking the tie towards the floor. But the big reason I was still comfortable with Deontay over Ladd, for example, and I'm fine with the Ladd pick. Like, I don't want to rehash that and think it's like a mistake. But the big reason isn't the floor. It's that I also think Deontay has the same type of ceiling impact if he hits, like what you were describing. It's not just like some points, at least in the way that I think through what his profile could mean. Obviously, just described all that. But I think it could be like an 8 target a week guy, which even if he's not hyper efficient, it can be very impactful. The weeks he scores touchdowns and things like that in a full PPR format. I mean, he could be a guy that's hitting for, 6 catches a game on average, whatever. I wouldn't surprise me if he has multiple 10-catch games this year, which he's done at times throughout his career. He's a really strong target earner. It dates back to his college years. His targets per out run at Toledo were massive. I mean, he's just a dude that gets open. Every quarterback he plays with wants to throw him the ball. So anyway, a lot of Deontay Johnson love on this stream. But I agree with you. And now that we have both Ladd and Brian Thomas, I actually really like having both of them here. And we have the Rashee Rice element, all behind Diggs. Like, I think there's a nice blend there. Even if, like, Ladd, for example, was, because I say he's a wide band guy, has a little bit of a miss. If he was a miss, you have to miss on both Ladd and Brian Thomas to really feel like you're
right.
The point of these wide receiver picks, the rookies, the upside swings in this range is to, have some contingency, some redundancy, and the hits can be so impactful. There might be misses at times as well, but that's just part of it. Javonte goes, Devin Singletary goes. Those running backs are starting to go. Singletary's a nice value for me. Yeah. You have Benson as a top running back in the queue right now. And I'm comfortable with him at this price for sure. We also have Chase Brown in there. I mean, I'm starting to like Benson goes like multiple rounds higher on Underdog. They're closer here in ADP. They're only 5 picks apart. I'm starting to think that Benson's a little bit risky. Like, James Conner seems like he's the real starter. Is coming off his first 1,000-yard season, had his best rushing season of his career last year, 5 yards per carry. The team's talking about him as like the lead guy. They drafted Benson because like Connor's an older back, but it seems like Benson, who was never really a workhorse in college and dealt with his own injury issues, looks pretty solid as a per touch guy, but never showed the ability to really handle big workloads. Seems like he's going to be like a change of pace guy and sort of like a pure handcuff. It's kind of pricey for a pure handcuff that maybe himself can't handle a big workload if Conor goes down. I'm just trying to work through that. I'm curious if you have any big thoughts on Benson. He does go.
Yeah, I mean he's just like he's a rookie running back who got a decent draft capital. It's
Behind an
not
old starter.
right,
It's a very classic formula. You take the rookie behind the old starter who got good draft capital, right?
right, and he will get some play straight away. I think that's a fair expectation. And in the zero with the zero or B picks, you do want somebody who's already playing.
That makes sense. He did go. Trevor Lawrence goes there. He's one of my favorite mid-round QBs. I've talked about him on a couple pods recently as a nice value. We have Brian Thomas. He could have been somewhat interesting. We do have 2 Falcons, so like a later Kirk Cousins to this build could make sense. Justin Herbert with Ladd McConkey would make some sense. Those are the only stacks that we have available to us right now, but we could also do some later stuff. It's not a huge priority. For me, the priority would be a running back here.
Right, that's what we'd like. We'd like to get somebody we feel really good about in our RB2 spot.
So nice. Blake Corum goes there. I saw the green, and I was a little worried. But that drafter had already taken Zach Moss. They let Chase Brown through. I prefer Chase Brown to Corum for sure. I prefer Chase Brown to anything on the board here, unless you have a strong case for something else.
No, I agree with you. Chase Brown is who I would pick here.
Nice. Yeah, the Bengals backfield just collectively is so clearly undervalued between Moss and Brown. There's some concerns with Brown. People have talked a lot about, he didn't do a ton last year, and we're really projecting him forward. But the team's talking about him like he's going to be the number 2. I've compared that to how the Browns were talking about Jerome Ford last offseason. Jerome Ford had like 8 touches in his rookie year. I remember talking about how he was just purely a special teams guy in 2022. Last offseason, I was talking about this, and I was concerned. But the team kept consistently saying, he's our dude. He's our dude. He's our dude. He had exactly 8 touches. Weird that I remember that random number. But he has 248 touches in his second season. And they were telling us that he goes from 8 touches to 240. That's, the drum beat on Chase Brown isn't that much, but it certainly has been they think he's their dude. He only had 58 touches last year, but certainly more than the 8 that Jerome Ford had as a rookie, and was efficient on those 58 touches. They didn't bring in a lot of other stuff other than obviously Moss, but Moss trades off for Mixon as almost like a downgrade and like expected workload potential.
And it's a valuable backfield as well. Like
right, that's the thing.
Able to rack up a lot. Wow, that's a big reach on the auto. He was able to rack up a lot of expected points, not even playing on third downs. So even just being a first and second down player, you still get a lot of targets. You still get a lot of goal line looks.
Burrow checks down, yes, and he's I've talked about this before, but his efficiency in passing to running backs is higher than other quarterbacks. That seems like a weird thing. It's like, every quarterback can check down, but it's not exactly that simple. There are some quarterbacks who are a little bit better at getting down to the running back when they're still in space before defenders are crashing on them and dropping the ball off to him, and the catch rates are consistently higher as a result. Burrow's somebody who's running backs throughout his career, I don't know about the last couple of years, but especially early in his career, were massive, and I'm pretty sure that continued. Yeah, Chase Brown caught 14 of his 15 targets last year. That's not a huge amount of targets overall, but it gets to that point where you don't see running backs have 90 plus catch rates, but that's another minor little benefit. Yeah. Joe Mixon caught over 80% of his targets last year, which is really good for a 64 target sample. Usually the average for a running back is about 75. He was at 75%. He was at 81.3%. Chase Brown caught 93%. That's been consistent with Burrow. So yeah, this is a really fun backfield for a variety of reasons. That's one little minor benefit because he does throw to the backs a lot and at a high efficiency rate. So we're almost back up. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we're gonna have some interesting decisions here because I know you had noted that you like having 4 or you like having 5 early. We're still only at 4 now. We have the benefit of the early tight ends, but there are some potential values here in Courtland Sutton and potentially Tyler Lockett, and then we also have a kind of a boring potentially depending on who the guy ahead of us takes, a potentially boring running back pick 2 in Jerome Ford, which would be our third running back. So
I'm not taking a lot of Ford because I think, if Chubb does make it back, I think there's a lot of people that think that Chubb can't play at all, but if he does make it back at some point this year, I want the back-weighted production. It's just tough to envision Ford not having his workload cut back at the time when it matters the most. So I wouldn't mind pushing that. The other thing I was going to suggest to you is Justin Herbert, who's not even the top QB right now. He might make it back to us. The guys behind us on the board I was just looking at, 4 of the 7 have 2 QBs already. And then the other 3...
I feel very comfortable pushing quarterback.
Yeah, we'll push QB. I like the Sutton call, if you're okay with it.
Yep. Yeah, I'm on board to take Sutton.
Do you like Sutton over Lockett, or do you have a strong opinion either way on that?
I don't have a particularly strong opinion. I'm probably slightly into Sutton just because you do get some nice ADP value here, but I wouldn't pound the table if you really liked Lockett.
I think the leans towards Sutton too. I've taken a decent amount of Lockett early on. The more I talk to Sean about how Seattle's going to work, he sounds a little bit more concerned about Lockett. He's getting me concerned. We're both very high on JSN. And then DK Metcalf, I think DK Metcalf's overpriced. I don't take DK Metcalf basically at all, but he is good and in his prime. And if JSN breaks out, it does potentially start to squeeze out Lockett a little. He's he's a value. He's a guy you can take, but you can see scenarios where this passing game plays out where it's mostly JSN and DK Metcalf this year. Look, I'm not saying don't draft Lockett, but if he's the number 3 in his own passing game, whereas Sutton is the number 1, which he appears like he's going to be, we're going to like having Sutton, I think, at this cost. Sutton's just a really cheap way to get exposure to the first pass catcher in an offense. I think Bo Nix is a good prospect and is a really good fit for the Sean Payton system. He's an interesting now back stack option at quarterback if we wanted to have that open to us.
I like that call as well, where we've opened up a late round QB.
We've opened.
The other point is you were talking about maybe adding some floor to make sure we're getting some wide receiver 2 points.
Right.
I feel like Courtland Sutton does that in a really good, cheap way where you still have some of the upside scenarios. Yeah, not as well as Deontay, but he does kind of fit that niche.
And that point of pushing QB, Tua's still there to cover Herbert. He's now 20 plus picks behind ADP. Herbert's also behind ADP, but the next QB is Kirk Cousins. So even if Herbert were to go on this side of the board where all these QBs already are, we could take Cousins if we were really concerned about it. Who we have Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson. We've already made a bet
Cousins
on that
would
offense.
be a good pick here, for sure.
So I don't even know. The question is, do we want to push it even more? Our buddy Chung, or we think it's Chung in the one hold, does not have a QB. Doesn't have any reason to take either of those QBs. He just took Gus Edwards, so maybe he's a little bit betting into the Chargers, but no Falcons. Drake London's on the backside of the board. We have Bijan and Pitts, so arguably Cousins. Oh, the 4-hole also. Again. Yeah, the 4-hole also doesn't have a QB. No other Charger has gone, right? Other than our McConkey pick. Is
Vidal and Vidal just the tree hole is on auto. He took Vidal very early.
Okay, he took Kamani Vidal. Okay. We have. So the top 3 by ADP right now are QBs: Tua, Herbert, Cousins. Either of Herbert or Cousins makes sense. Whereas Stafford just went ahead of those 2.
Yeah.
It starts to become a thing where the guys behind us, 2 of them don't have a QB at all. They could take 2 QBs before we pick again. 2 of them have 1 QB. I do think pushing QB through here is risky. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just trying to think through it because there's some good options to add to our
ends. You can see a lot of the tight end hunger coming into play as well. With K. Dotton going way ahead of ADP. Hunter Henry.
So Herbert
going
just got autoed by the 9 hole.
Okay. So that's one of our outs gone off the board. And
Tua's still there for coverage. I think I'd probably just take Cousins, but I don't know. What do you think?
I'm happy with Cousins here. I think Cousins is a good pick here. There is a running back I really like here just behind them. That would be a good RB tree.
Yeah, I just threw a couple running backs in the queue as well, although they're in a different order. So I'm wondering if you were clicking on the queue too. I'm curious because right now you have Kendre Miller down behind Marshawn Lloyd and Ty Chandler, or that's what I'm seeing in the queue. Are you out on Kendre Miller?
No, I'm not. I'd probably have it Lloyd, Kendre, Chandler.
Okay. Yeah, Lloyd and Miller go back to back. Okay, Lloyd went.
Lloyd goes. He's the one who I would have considered pushing.
So the issue at QB is if Tua goes, I mean, again, 2 teams behind us don't even have a QB yet, and a bunch just went, or I guess just 2 went, but we are getting to the point where you got to think people are going to start worrying about taking QB. We have Tua, Cousins. Behind Cousins, it's Deshaun Watson, Rodgers, Baker. There's not a lot of options. 4 or 5 could go at this turn. I kind of think, especially after Lloyd went, who was the one you liked, that we should just be taking Cousins here. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
I like pushing QB. This is a spot where with 2 guys behind us not having taken a QB and kind of a drop-off coming.
Yeah.
I mean, Nix is our backup plan is the one argument for going like Kendre Miller here. But
we can't we would need it the next piece. I think we should do Cousins.
Okay. Nix has the same buy as Jackson is what you're going to say. Good point.
That's literally what I was going to say. And then a lot of those late quarterbacks also have that 14 buy.
And Tua goes off immediately after we take Cousins. Snap picked. And so I'm really happy we took Cousins because if that guy wanted a QB, he's one of the teams who had already taken only one QB. He gets his second right away. The guy with no QBs takes another receiver and is continuing to push QB. But again, the 101.
What is Tree doing? He's just taken Ricky Pearsall.
He's set up some type of auto pick queue, but it's a lot of rookies because he just took 3 straight rookies.
Is this the nightmare scenario of the Matic Starmad where?
Yeah, it's not great. Or somehow he's got Dynasty ADP in there or something. I mean, even that doesn't make sense because Vidal would be going behind Pearsall, wouldn't he? Anyway, Chung is on the clock here, but yeah, with Tua off the board, we have Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Mayfield I was mentioning, and then it gets down to Geno, Will Levis, Bryce Young, Derek Carr. I mean, it starts to get thin at QB pretty quick after this group. This is where like the QB window, as Sean always talks about, is closing at this point. I don't even know if Kirk Cousins is a part of it. Tua probably is a part of it, and was a huge slider. He's a tough one to pass up there for Cousins, but when you've already made the bet on Bijan and Pitts, I think it's a pretty straightforward decision.
Right. We're making a pretty large bet on that offense, and that has to come through Kirk Cousins, right?
Right. I mean, theoretically, it could come through Penix, but we're certainly not saying that it's going to.
Yeah, I had sort of thought that that either the 3 or the 2 would be the Chua owners, but it's interesting that the 3 already had in their 2 early quarterbacks, and then 2 had Hurts. So they're I guess they're not necessarily hurting that Tua went to the Chan guy.
Is that who took him?
I'd mentioned 4 that they'd early on they hated tight ends. Now I've seen this a consistent trend where they just completely push quarterback, and they seem to do this in almost every draft.
Chung also pushes quarterback. There goes running back. Baker Mayfield goes. So we do see a second QB go, but the 2 drafters who had yet to take a QB through 3 of the picks between ours, they're going to get 4 picks between our 2 picks. through 3 of them have not taken another QB, which that was where I was like, man, I mean, either of those teams could take 2, and that's where you could get 5 or 6 QBs going. It doesn't look like it's going to be the huge QB run I was fearing, but there's, the Tua pick went, the Mayfield pick went. Oh, so that drafter did take Deshaun Watson there as well. I feel very comfortable with the Cousins pick after seeing that play out as well, that we went that direction. The other thing is Kendra Miller's still here, Drico. We're almost back, and he makes it all the way back to us. How do you feel about it? All the way back?
Yeah.
He's the ADP value now at the top of the queue by almost ADP 10 picks. Value.
I'm seeing 15, based on the last 5 days of drafting, 20 drafts. He's 15 picks of ADP value. I'm happy to slam that at RB tree for sure.
Good, because he's like one of my highest drafted running backs, and I'm taking him ahead of ADP. So I definitely wanted to take him 15 picks behind ADP. Chris G either liked that value or just is happy to see Drico's face, one or the other. What's up, G? Hope you're well. That was a nice run out. We give up Kendra Miller to take Cousins and get Kendra Miller to come back to us.
And we were kind of right on the QB thing where
3 QBs go there.
Dude, like I have a tough time believing that Kirk Cousins would have made it back when Baker and Deshaun Watson went.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't think he would have.
Baker.
There was no Atlanta player on that side. The guy who took Watson had Njoku. The guy who took Baker had...
Oh, you're right.
Well, the guy who took Baker didn't have... He has Jonathan Brooks for a Week 17 thing, but he doesn't have Evans or Godwin. I think he probably goes Cousins over Baker.
Yeah.
And I mean, like we don't know what's going to happen. The guy in between is auto drafting all these rookies. That's something we didn't foresee. You mentioned Leggett. He takes Jalen Polk on the way back. He's now taking Leggett, Vidal, Pearsall, and Polk on the last 4 picks, all as autos. But also, like, we don't know if somebody who didn't take a QB might have considered Cousins, but then they thought once Cousins went, he was, the right pick, what have you. Anyway, it's going
to take a lot of luck for Chung to get what's his name, the Seahawks QB Geno Smith all the way back.
Oh, Rodgers goes to another auto draft. That's that guy's 3rd QB. It sucks we got 2 people auto drafting here now.
Yeah, it does. That's very strange. And that somebody they were in the draft, they were engaged. And then that's Demarcus Robinson at the 1401. This is definitely one of the most bizarre drafts that I've been in.
That stuck out to me too. I wondered if it was just different over here on FFPC. I actually have been drafting some Demarcus Robinson, but because he's so late, like the fact that he would go at 1401, wide receiver 65 ahead of Jahan Dotson, like over on Underdog, that's the ADP gap there is massive. Josh Downs just went. I mean, Demarcus Robinson went ahead of Josh Downs. That's wild. We did lose Jalen Wright, who I'd thrown in the queue. Would have been a really fun addition for this build. I'm not seeing anything.
Pretty flat. So the only one I'd sort of suggest, given given the flatness, would be the guy I just put in the queue, just a tiny bit ahead of ADP.
It's not showing up. I don't think anyone's watching that's in the draft, honestly.
What's that?
It's not showing up on my screen, so I was asking who is it.
Yeah. I don't think anybody. AD Mitchell would be someone. Ray Davis.
Yeah, I was looking down to Ray Davis as well. Jaleel McLaughlin is a top running back. I have not been drafting him at all because I don't think he can get the workload size. But if we do have Sutton. If there's a scenario where we'd consider a QB3 here with the Broncos, I wouldn't mind taking McLaughlin as well, just to kind of build out a bet on the Broncos.
Yeah, you're right. You shouldn't be passing up sliders like that.
On a team that's like anchor RB. I mean, I don't mind the AD Mitchell pick though either.
I don't think AD Mitchell. Well, actually, who knows what's been going on? Yeah, I agree with you. Jaleel McLaughlin is probably the pick.
Okay. We'll grab another running back here. Again, not a guy I take a ton of. I did see.
I don't know if I want 0 either, just given like how valuable that backfield can be,
right?
How uncertain it is, and
right.
how electric he was throughout this year.
Right. Yep, very well said. That's exactly right. I've been really hammering Javonte and Estime because I do think the values in the backfield are typically in the backs with a little more size in the Sean Payton backfields. I think the weight element is kind of big, and the fact that McLaughlin didn't play a lot of snaps after his breakout early in the season is kind of an issue, et cetera, et cetera. But we're already kind of doing something with Denver on this team. We need a running back. Chase Brown and Kendre Miller could both be guys that don't play a ton at times. They're kind of maybe more big swing types. McLaughlin, I feel like, will have a role. I just worry about how big that role could get. But like you said, this backfield is so valuable as a whole. If he has a piece of it, he could be a nice floor play as part of this build. We already have Bijan. We're just doing a little
kind of like a discounted Chase Brown, isn't he? Where he had the electric plays,
yes,
the kind of a low-ish snap count, but when he played, he was getting the ball. And
yeah, the key difference would be that Chase Brown in college had like 8 or 10 games where he had like 25 plus touches and was a workhorse and put up 120 yards in almost all of them. I tweeted something out to that effect recently. I don't remember the exact numbers.
Difference.
Yeah. He has this workhorse background that I think Chase Brown could leverage that and eventually take over the Bengals backfield, or if Moss got hurt, would take over the Bengals backfield. Whereas if like Javonte gets hurt, I don't know that McLaughlin would. I think it would be Estime or still be a split or something. But he is like, he was efficient and he is going to get some work, and he's a nice like upside, like change of pace type guy for a best ball build when you don't have to decide when to play him. I can totally get it. Like, like you said, I don't want to have 0 of him. The guy I just put in the queue, I don't know if you can see him, is one of my. He's actually my highest drafted player in all
it's
formats.
Bucky Irving.
Yeah,
I think here's something funny. I think we put him in the queue at the exact same time.
Okay.
As soon as you said it, I was like, I literally put him in like a second before you said it.
He, I mean, like, we can fade the inefficiency of Rachaad White. Probably is going to have a little bit of standalone value at some point. I mean, it doesn't feel like he has any competition for the RB2 role. I just don't understand why he's so cheap. He was the RB6 in this draft. I know he was a 4th round pick, but the team put some weight behind that pick. They passed up a lot of other running backs. Yeah, anyway, you're good at taking him here, right?
And they've been gushing about him as well.
Have they? That's okay. That's good to hear. I've been hearing a little bit of concern about like his pass blocking and stuff like that, but we're taking him here, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
And so then
we just built out running back in a nice way. We have Bijan, and then I mean the advantage of taking Bijan is you can be weaker at RB2. I like that you got us on Brian Thomas in the 9th there. I wasn't really thinking that like we have our anchor in Bijan. We made a stand by taking him at 106. We don't need to be heavy on RB2. This isn't, a spot where we had to get into that tier of backs I was talking about earlier with like Jaylen Warren and stuff. We did get Chase Brown, then we went away from it again. You got us back on Sutton. I think those are really smart decisions on Brian Thomas and Sutton to build out the receiver depth and push the running back depth. We still get Kendre Miller, Jaleel McLaughlin, and Bucky Irving. We get the Cousins really nice, stack actually in there. What's that?
That feels really nice to be able to push it that far and getting some really, really strong 0 RB targets. That's
right. I mean, we did get some nice. I mean, it's Bijan, Chase Brown, Kendre Miller, Jaleel McLaughlin, and Bucky Irving is like, okay, I'm here for it. At receiver, Diggs, Lad McConkey, Rashee Rice, Brian Thomas, Courtland, Sutton, only 5. We really needed both Brian Thomas and Sutton, and I don't think I was like, in my mind, like that. Those are the top of my mind. So again, great calls to get us on those two because we needed to get at least 5 there. Everything else is really strong. Lamar Jackson, Kirk Cousins. We do want to start thinking about Lamar's back stack options. Bateman actually goes here in the 15th, so that's a big one to consider as maybe our wide receiver 6.
Well, the other thing the other thing to think about, and it's really annoying, a lot of the guys that I'd be targeting here to fill out our wide receiver spots, they're getting autoed by the tree hole.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating. So, I mean,
That's the guy who, for the audio listeners who have, that's the guy who has set some type of rookie auto draft list and went Xavier Legette, Kamani Vidal, Ricky Pearsall, Jalen Polk, and then this last turn went Jermaine Burton, Malachi Corley. So 2 more rookies. His early draft was Tyreek Hill, Malik Neighbors, Josh Allen, Kittle, Rashad White, Aaron Jones, Kyler Murray, Tony Pollard, Raheem Mostert. There's a lot of vets, 4 running backs that are, decent draft capital. So he didn't really have to get running backs. He needed to build out receiver. He only had 2 receivers, and he's just set a queue that's a ton of rookie receivers. I don't even think that's like a crazy way to build this build out. I mean, it kind of makes some sense. We'll see what happens with the rest of his queue if it's all auto the rest of the way. But
yeah, I wonder if it just goes right down the list. Like, is he because obviously he skipped AD Mitchell. Wandale was
Wandale, you had in the queue, just got autoed as well.
So I wonder if we. I have another person who.
Do you think Devontae is gonna go to that auto? He's like way down in ADP.
I don't think he is. Because I don't think Devontae has been getting drafted that much, so I can't see him being on anyone's radar.
Okay, he is on Underdog. He's a lot lower here. There's a lot of rookies in the queue list ahead of him. I'm definitely willing to push him here, and then we definitely push him after 17 because we're not really worried about anyone on that side of the board taking him. Maybe at like 1807, it would make sense before that auto drafters.
Hold on, before we do have somebody who stacked up that game, the Week 17 game, Baltimore and the Texans in Chung. He doesn't have the quarterback, but he has a Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell. So
is he really going to take a third Raven without Lamar?
Oh, you're right. Probably not.
He already has 2 Ravens. I think we're good there. We're on the clock, though. Clock winding down a little. I like you have Marvin Mims at the top of the queue. I like that a lot. Tyrone Tracy is the running back name I would throw out, but I think we're pretty solid at running back at the moment.
Yeah, I'm a lot more worried about receiver than running back.
Okay. Let's take Mims. We're in agreement on him as the top receiver to be drafted right now.
Okay.
Comfortably. He's a good ad.
If it weren't, the tree hole is like, maybe this is, I'm getting inside my own head, but the tree hole is kind of freaking me out a little bit, where it's like a lot of the guys I want, what if he just autos them? It's like, okay, well.
Yeah.
Let's
look at the rest of our draft. We have 4 more picks. We just took Mims. We already had Sutton and McLaughlin. We're really committing to this Bo Nix thing. So he would be Luke McCaffrey goes. This guy is just autoing all the rookies. He would be one of the picks at some point. If we're worried about the 3-hole taking Devontae Walker, I think at 1807 we would take him before the 1819 turn.
Yeah, you're right.
And so Nix and Walker would be guys that we would pigeonhole for upcoming picks. I don't know if we can we push Nix to 1906?
So we'd be.
Or should we take him in 17? He's the 4th QB in the ADP, but he sometimes goes ahead over on Underdog. Russell Wilson and JJ McCarthy are 2 of the 3 ahead of him. Both those guys, there's some playtime concerns, and so I see Nix sometimes get pulled up.
So which guy has Javonte? So the Javonte drafter has Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, Derek Carr. And so there's no, forgive me if I'm wrong here, there isn't really another Bronco. Because,
no, it would be Troy Franklin. It's interesting McCaffrey went there because Franklin is higher in ADP. So this guy has some weird ranks. So Chung takes Drake May. I wondered if he might go that direction with it too. But he might still take Bo Nix, man.
He should take Javon Baker, probably, or
he actually shouldn't take Nix with May. They both have a week 14. I mean, he could, but because he has Geno Smith as well. But he takes Franklin. This guy better not auto Devontae Walker here at 1703. We're sweating. Oh, that was a sick sweat. All right, JJ McCarthy goes. That was one of the sicker sweats where you're like, God, is this guy going to auto? And now I don't think. Okay, so Russell Wilson went too. This makes me want to push Nix now because, I mean, not push, take him. Push him to the top of our queue. Tyrone Tracy did make it back, but Bryce Young's the only one ahead of him in ADP. And then it's Fields, Gardner Minshew, etc. Anyone who wants a QB is going to be like, Bo Nix is my last gasp.
Right.
And if we want to get this stack, like I don't think we have to have a third QB even with a Lamar, Kirk Cousins, but because we're all stacked up, it seems like in a 20-round draft, it seems like the right move, right?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. We don't necessarily need it, but we've made this big bet on that offense. We actually also have the Chase Brown bring back week 17.
Yeah. We have Cousins stacked up nicely. We're going to get a piece to go with Lamar, or that's the plan. I think it gives us 3 QBs all stacked potentially. That's the idea. We pass on Tyrone Tracy in that scenario, but we have 5 running backs already and Bijan at the very top. Like, I mean, we could theoretically stop at running back. I don't think we have to get an RB6 here.
It is a rather large tier break after Tracy.
It is. What do you think? The problem is that the 3-hole where like I would be comfortable trying to push Nix back to us in the 18th and then taking Devontae later, but I feel like Devontae is going to go, right?
Yeah, let's just take Nix.
All right.
Because the other piece here is that the bet we've made this big bet on the Broncos offense, and so the opportunity cost of Tyrone Tracy should not be that big of a concern because we're already tied to that offense being really good.
And with these other QBs going, like I said, if anyone wants a third QB,
yeah.
It sort of had to be Nix, or like Bryce Young is still there. It could have been Bryce Young, and it can still be Bryce Young. But after that, you're down to the Justin Fields, Gardner Minshew, Sam Darnold, Aiden O'Connell groups. Tyrone Tracy gets autoed. He was I really like taking Tracy. He was not an easy
player to pass up.
An easy player to pass on at all. And it's going to be tough even to find running backs. I mean, I don't really like the very late running backs. We might have to just stop at 5 as a result of this. I don't know what you think about the 19th and 20th rounds, but
there's always guys you can take, right? Like there's always Dylan Labe, there's Shipley.
Sure. I just threw Estime in the queue, and I know we took McLaughlin, but we know that's kind of a committee, and we know there's a big pie, so it's a backfield where I don't mind taking 2 cheap stabs at it. Oh, the chat says, just take Rondale. Basically Tyrone Tracy, but with a Cousins stack. That part's funny. Obviously, we don't get the running back points, but he basically is Tyrone Tracy. Tyrone Tracy played wide receiver before becoming a running back. Rondale is vaguely a running back himself. But the Cousins stack is a good point. We could consider a Rondale Moore tack on.
Yeah, he should be up there for us.
Christopher says from Diggs to Ladd and PPR is a little rough. That Bowers pick was probably unnecessary. I don't know if you're certain about the format here, but it is a 2 receiver, 1 tight end, 2 flex format with tight end premium. So the Bowers pick is, you can certainly still criticize it, but theoretically all 3 of our tight ends can start. It's not a situation where we're taking a backup or any of that type of situation. And then, we only need to start 2 of these wide receivers. So it's not the deepest wide receiver room, but things are very different the way they work out in Best Ball in this format. Audric Estime goes to the auto drafter there. Was hoping he'd come all the way back around to the 19th for us. The auto drafters scooping up all the value, driving me a little nuts. Bryce Young did go. So, I mean, again, I feel pretty good about the next decision there, too. I think we played QB where we kind of needed to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if we'll see another QB go in this draft now because, I mean, maybe Fields will go.
I love these drafts where you just starve the beast and then you see T.O. Johnson go in the 18th.
Yeah. He's maybe not going to play a lot. I mean, he might play, but, you know, it's him or Bellinger for the Giants at tight end, not a lot of clarity in how that might work out.
So one of the beat writers that he was asked, hey, who's somebody who might not make the team that would be a shock to the fans? And he said Danny Bellinger.
Oh, interesting.
So there is something interesting about T.O. Johnson.
Yeah.
He's definitely, I mean, this is a specific draft where Colby Parkinson is gone. But I like him a lot more in the 20th than the 18th.
So Jalen McMillan was the only rookie that was like, I mean, it's hard to take Devonta's over maybe a little bit, and maybe some cover for that auto drafter, but he goes. We're good to just take Devonta's here.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Sort of just based on the room, and you know, you got to be flexible to all sorts of weird things. This auto drafter has taken all these rookies. Even when they went QB with JJ McCarthy, it was a rookie QB. I don't know.
Part of me is curious to know if he would have passed on him twice, but
yeah,
with the way like if we weren't taking him at the 18th, we would have taken him in the 19th.
Right.
And
so it's just like an unnecessary risk because it's really flat otherwise. And like the point where Luke McCaffrey went ahead of Troy Franklin despite being behind ADP suggests that this guy he's not even just setting his queue to rookies by ADP. It's some type of rookie list that he's manually clicked names.
Right.
So then you're just gambling that Devontae Walker's not a guy that you put on it.
Completely gambling.
Yeah. Because it could be the guy that he likes. And there's two that are going to come. Although the other thing I'm wondering is because he took Vidal in there and McCarthy, I'm wondering if we're going to get receivers or not. So let's see. So he goes Aiden O'Connell there. He might have set some type of positional limits. He has 8 receivers. He might be in a spot where he's not going to take any more receivers one way or another.
One tight end as well.
Only one tight end, and that was his 4th QB. This is a gross team. But I mean, it's got a lot of fun players. What's up, Sacrilegious? Happy to have you, Sacrilegious, your stat chasing buddy in season.
Yeah, I've drafted a lot of these with Sack as well.
Nice.
He's a fun guy to draft with.
He is a great, very fun guy to draft with. We are, I mean, at this stage,
we're kind of done at tight end unless we got some like sick value, which I don't see.
So the build right now for the audio listeners is Lamar, Kirk Cousins, Bo Nix, 3 QBs. It's a 5 running back: Bijan, Chase Brown, Kendre Miller, Jaleel McLaughlin, Bucky Irving. It feels like one of these picks, probably the RB6 in a 20 round draft. Receivers still pretty thin too. Stephon Diggs, Lad McConkey, Rashee Rice, Brian Thomas, Courtland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Devontae Walker for the Lamar Jackson stack. Like you said, we're probably good at tight end. Trey McBride, Kyle Pitts, Bowers. It feels to me a little bit like tacking on, what is it? We have 7 receivers, a wide receiver 8, and a running back 6 kind of makes the most sense, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, to me, it's just going to be about which. So we definitely need one receiver. We need one more receiver, and then after that, it's kind of about which player do we like more.
Okay.
That's sort of how I feel.
You feel the 8th receiver is a bigger priority than the 6th running back.
Yes, for sure. Reason for that is obviously we did get we got some really strong running back targets here, and our volume and quality is okay at receiver, but it's still a little bit lower than we'd normally like. So this is definitely somewhere where, just for example, Rondale Moore feels very strong because we have that stack.
For sure. It would have been nice to get an opportunity to take Luke McCaffrey as a bring back on the Atlanta thing.
I'm not. How do you feel about Javon Baker?
I mean, I like him. I like taking him. I see you have him in the queue. You also have Rondale and Greg Dortch, who I also really like. I'm fine with any of those three receivers.
Me too.
Moore is nice for the stack with Cousins, but we do have both Pitts and Bijan. I mean, sometimes I think the stacks get a little too heavy. Baker doesn't really correlate. Oh, I guess we have Ladd, so it's a bring back on the week 17 Ladd pick. Baker just feels like a bigger swing. I think we should take Baker.
Okay.
Well, wait, bye. He's got week 14. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 other receivers with the week 14 bye. Let's take Rondale.
Okay.
I grabbed him there at the last second. Yeah, I noticed that with Mims and Walker, we were adding some week 14 buys. We already had Sutton and we had Diggs early with a week 14 buy as our bring back on Lamar. So, I mean, it's not like the end of the world, but a decent tiebreaker there. Just add the correlation piece that doesn't have the same buy that we're heavily exposed to.
Yeah, it makes sense, especially with like trying to figure out like it there wasn't much to separate them.
Right.
So adding the correlation and avoiding additional bye week exposure.
A4 says the sound disparity between your mics is distracting. Can barely hear one while the other is shouting at the top of his lungs. Apparently, I'm the one that's shouting at the top of my lungs. Apologize for
Apparently,
that.
I need to shout louder.
Yeah, we didn't do a lot of audio testing when we decided to go live literally 30 seconds before the draft started. We were just going to do a draft, and we're like, we'll fire this up, throw it on stream. Apologies for the audio.
Yeah.
Anyone who has an issue with the audio, I mean, other than A4, has probably already stopped listening. Unfortunately, I wish I would have known that earlier. It's one of those things that when you're doing the pods, I do appreciate the note. When you're doing the pods, you can't hear it, right? Like I can't hear it on the other side. I don't know that there's this disparity. Bonesaw says, I'm fine. Drico could speak up. Oh, God. I wish he would. Jeez.
It's a completely free podcast, right?
Yeah. We're doing the best we can.
I'm sorry I don't have an NPR quality voice.
Oh, there's the rookies only thing that you can check. I wonder if the guy checked that, although he just took Tank Bigsby. So, I mean, he's
Aiden O'Connell, Tanks Bigsby. So I think he had a list that he was running through, and then that list ended.
So the late running back, you mentioned Laube, that I've gotten a little bit more interested in is Trey Sermon. It sounds like he's in the lead for the RB2 role. I actually looked at, I was surprised to see that last year he actually got the most RB2 touches for Indy. He actually played like a decent amount at the end of last season. He got 35 carries and he had a 4.6 yards per carry as well. Like he was somewhat good. My perception of Trey Sermon is that he's like basically either never played or been terrible at the NFL level, but that's not actually like really the case. And the beats are talking about him like he's the kind of the lead guy for the number 2 role behind Taylor. I don't think he's going to have any real standalone value. I think it's going to be a lot of Jonathan Taylor this year. But if Taylor were to get hurt, he feels like there's not a lot of competition there. It's Evan Hull and these guys. It's going to be a run-heavy offense. That's my case for a 20th round running back that isn't getting drafted in most of these.
Yeah, it's difficult to have strong opinions about these guys. I don't taken a lot of Trey Sermon, and I do like Dortch as well. He feels a little bit stronger because we do have Trey McBride, so he correlates there.
You like Dortch. So, I mean, I think we're good with 8 receivers in a 2 receiver format. with
Okay.
the 3 early tight ends. I'm a little more concerned about the depth at RB2. And like if Bijan had a short-term injury or something, just like floating it. Like I do feel positionally like RB6 is a little bit more of a priority.
Okay.
Personally.
So, I guess it's a choice between. So Trey Sermon is like pure handcuff. Eric Gray, I think he's gonna play as like a change of pace guy for the Giants.
No, his profile is just not good enough for me. Like I don't think Eric Gray is actually good. I mean, I could understand, but
Okay.
But Dortch is intriguing.
Okay.
I mean, I'm trying to think through like, do you like I like Dortch's profile. Do you really like the idea of going 9 receivers here?
I kind of do. But I mean, if I know you said before you don't really like getting a 9, so I think it's kind of a toss up.
All right, I'm gonna go Sermon if that's okay. We're at 2 seconds.
Yep.
I think I feel a little stronger about the structural stuff than you sound too. I do feel, I mean, especially because the Chase Brown, Kendre Miller, Jaleel McLaughlin, like Bucky Irving. I don't know if there's a lot of like value there. I mean, like standalone.
There's not a lot of floor.
Yeah, there's not a lot of floor, and I don't think Sermon addresses that. But having another guy in the build, just from a numbers standpoint, I think is helpful.
Right.
And I do think Sermon, as far as what's available in the 20th round, is very draftable at this point after having, just done their projection and talked about the Colts a lot today. That just might be my take for, July 3rd. I wonder if I'll feel this way a month from now, but I just did the pod with Leone that broke down the Colts and all of that. And I really do think this team's going to be very run heavy. So if something were to happen to Jonathan Taylor, again, even if it's a short-term thing, I think there's the potential for some big rush volume for Sermon in those games. And the beats are talking about him like he's the pretty clear number 2. That's the impression that Leone was getting as well. It may not be like something that actually sticks. This might be a 0 still. He could get cut, right? Like it could be a problem. But I liked getting an RB6 there. So that's the other
argument
the move
for Sermon here is that he's not getting drafted a lot. So if something does happen to Jonathan Taylor and it's Trey Sermon, I'm just checking here. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm wrong. No.
He is getting drafted?
He is getting drafted a little bit. I think he's at about 50% drafted.
Interesting. Laube would have been a good pick too. I don't know why I didn't really entertain that, but we had the Bowers and the Kendre Miller. We already had a little bit of a Raiders Saints Week 17 thing built out. We don't have anything going with Indy and the Giants. That's who you had at the top of the queue. I didn't really even consider that. That's my bad there. I mean, I think that would have been a strong pick there too. And he had the potential to be like more of a standalone value guy, I think, as well. Maybe if he's playing on passing downs. The audio discussion, Bonesaw says it's still great, even though there's the disparity in volume. A4 says, "You're fine, Gretch. I had to raise the volume to hear Drico. That's why it sounds so loud." All good, though. I love that note. And Christopher said, "Agree, Gretch is fine. Drico's quiet." So we got some.
Is it that I just have a quiet voice? Or is there something wrong with my microphone?
I think you're a little bit further away from the mic. I had you adjusting the gain earlier.
The microphone is like here. So, but
Christopher's noting he loves FFPC. I do too. With the tight end premium, the extra flexes, he said 175 points. You still feel nervous on a week. It really can be monster the way the scoring can go. So that this team, 20 round. Again, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 2 flex, single QB, tight end premium build. We go with 3 tight ends in the first 6 rounds. Our final team is Lamar, Kirk Cousins, and Bo Nix. We have Lamar stacked up with Devontae Walker late and Stephon Diggs as the bring back there. We have Kirk Cousins with Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts early. No Washington bring back on him. Bo Nix with Marvin Mims, with Jaleel McLaughlin, with Courtland Sutton, Chase Brown bring back there, a big Denver and Cincinnati thing. And I'm pretty sure they play the Chargers in week 16 as well. We have Ladd McConkey. I think there's some week 16 correlation in here. We mentioned the Raiders play the Falcons in week 15. Bowers was a bring back. We were talking about that when we talked about Adams. But anyway, we have the quarterbacks pretty well stacked up. Lamar, Cousins, and Nix. The running backs are Bijan Robinson, Chase Brown, Kendre Miller, Jaleel McLaughlin, Bucky Irving, and Trey Sermon at the end. Probably should have been Dylan Laube. The wide receivers, Stephon Diggs, Ladd McConkey, Rashee Rice, Brian Thomas, Courtland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Devontae Walker, and Rondale Moore. I do think we could have got to 9. A lot of those are kind of scratch-off types. They're kind of weak. It's not the strongest at the top. And looking back, that 20th round pick could have easily been a receiver as well as you were pushing Drico. And then at tight end, Trey McBride, Kyle Pitts, Brock Bowers. That's the strength of the team, frankly. What do you think about it? I love this team. It's a fun.
Yeah, I think so. Is this close enough? Do I sound better now?
Now people are running for the hills. It's too loud.
So I do think with the 20th round pick, it's kind of a toss up. I try not to lose too much sleep over it. I definitely have the guys I like, but end of the day, hopefully it doesn't make or break your team. I think this team is really good. Having the 3 early tight ends gives you a lot of upside, and it does give you a lot of ways to build different teams or have different combinations of players score in the playoffs. We have a lot of guys who could also that have a lot of upside there as well. It's strongly correlated. It probably looks a little bit different to some teams I've drafted in that we have some guys like Ladd McConkey and Jaleel McLaughlin who I don't draft very often. But I think that's also kind of a reaction to a weird room where you don't normally get a drafter like Chung at the 1 hole who's just taken all the guys that you like. You don't normally get somebody setting a rookie queue. But yeah, definitely feel good about how we reacted to it.
I think that's a good breakdown. Do you know Chung's username? Oh, this username is just Hong Kong, but it does have a star. He's a longtime player. I wonder if it is Chung. You said you've seen him use that name before. It would not be surprising because he does a lot on FFPC and is a very strong player and drafted very similarly to what we would expect from our buddy Ray Chung. What were you gonna say?
Like I said, I have seen him use that name before, and like you said, he's also drafting like him.
Right. So it wouldn't be at all surprising. I will say when you said the 20th round pick won't make or break, I will say part of the reason I was leaning towards Sermon, and the one thing I will defend the pick on, is if it does make anything, I think it's Trey Sermon who had the most upside to actually have a huge impact. Like if Jonathan Taylor has a significant injury, I think there are paths this year for Trey Sermon to actually like have kind of a solid season, and that they might use him because I think the rushing efficiency would be benefited by Anthony Richardson's mobility. And again, the 4.6 yards per carry last year in this scheme, like I think it actually could play up well for him. I don't think Laube is going to have a huge ceiling. I think he could develop into a standalone role. I don't think Dortch was probably going to have a huge ceiling. He could be a nice addition at the end of builds. I like drafting Dortch, and I think Laube is intriguing. I haven't taken a lot of him over on Underdog, but in the 20th round certainly would have been. There's only 18 rounds over on Underdog, and the 20th round certainly would have been an option. But I will say, if our 20th round pick winds up being a big upside play for a stretch, I'm going to guess that Trey Sermon was the dude that did that. It is Best Ball. The Best Ball moderate asked if it was Best Ball or managed. We are not managing this team. It was the $125 Best Ball tournament. The BBT, which Drico, our guest tonight, won 3 years ago. The 2021 season. Knows this format like the back of his hand. Was a blast to have him on. We're gonna probably do at least another one of these at some point, I would guess, Drico.
Yeah.
It's always kind of tough to figure the schedules out, but this was fun. We'll have to plan it out a little more. I'll have to get the link out to the viewers a little earlier next time.
Yeah. It can be it's difficult to plan the it's difficult to plan the fasts because normally you don't know it's going to fill until like a day beforehand. And then maybe this is unique to me. I don't want to publicize when I think a fast draft is going to fill because I want the natural ecosystem of FFPC users entering.
You don't want to push a bunch of like ship chasing people in your sphere into the draft. We don't need more chungs in our draft. That one hole took some of those guys. We were talking about being a little annoying when he took Tank Dell at 501, Xavier Worthy at 701. Snatched up JSN and Roma Dunze and left us Brian Thomas. Like one of those guys could have slid. It definitely makes a draft a little different when somebody who is into a similar build as you and into a lot of the same players is in the room with you. And if you get multiple of those players, it definitely starts to change things. That's what Underdog is. all of the drafters are the same type of person. Drico, tell the people what you've been up to. You've been doing some work over at Legendary Upside as well, right?
Yeah, so I use a lot of ranks to draft. I try to focus on the structural stuff and trying to manage the draft a lot as well. And wanted another strong source of rankings other than RotoViz. I use the RotoViz ones a lot, and so have been basically taking the Underdog ranks and converting them to FFPC. So that means sort of converting their stances on the tight ends into tight end premium and all of that other stuff. The wide receiver preferences. Obviously, a lot of the wide receivers are way ahead of ADP because of how the rooms normally work. And then I did do one strategy guide on quarterback on tight end article a couple of weeks ago. Do need to start writing a couple more, but definitely plan to get a couple more articles out there.
That is awesome. Everyone make sure to check all of that out. Programming note that I made earlier at the end of the Jacob stream stands. I'm going on vacation next week. You're not going to see me for 2 weeks. I said that earlier, then you saw me like a few hours later, but this time it will be true. Drico, thanks for hopping on the stream. We drafted an awesome team. To everyone else, take it easy. This is Stealing Signals. Later.